Hi people, it's me Anja, my pronouns all she and her, and welcome back to my channel for a new recent reads video. I haven't filmed a recent reads video in 2 weeks, which really goes to show that my November reading month has not been as fruitful as I really wanted it to be. But, you know, historically, this is how November goes. It's the penultimate month of the year. So anyway, the first book on this list is called Troublemaker. This story is a middle-grade historical fiction set during 1992 in LA specifically, and it's set against the backdrop of the acquittal of the police officers who beat up Rodney King and the recent manslaughter of Latasha Hollins. And it follows a young Korean-American main character, and I think this book is so good and so fantastic. First of all, this depiction of this history is so well written and so well done. It's so underrated, and I think it's something that should be talked about more, especially given the Korean American perspective, as well as just like the Black perspective as well, and the racial tensions between those two races. I think that this piece of history is so underrated, and it's something that people don't really talk about. Frankly, I think I've read one other book about the race riots of 1992, particularly surrounding Rodney King, and I didn't even know about Latasha until I read this book. But anyway, aside from the setting that was so vivid and so well done, I loved the story and the family dynamics and the characters and the friendships and the plot and everything about this book. I think this book is so fantastic and it's so good. So anyway, with that said, I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars. I would definitely highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called A Queen's Match. This story is the sequel to this duology, and frankly, first of all, I don't think I even knew that this book was coming out until I saw it in Libby and randomly downloaded it because I might as well finish this duology since I read the first book last year, I think. Or was that the year before? I don't remember. Anyway, I enjoyed this book and I rated it 3 stars. For those who don't know, this duology follows 3 real people set during the Victorian era, and they all get swept up in like romance and politics. And in the first book, 2 of the main characters were vying for the same guy, and I felt like in this book it was more messy, but not in terms of the romances necessarily, but more in terms of the writing, if that makes any sense. So like, for example, the ending felt abrupt, and I thought the series was going to be longer, but I guess in terms of like certain deaths, like she planned to end it here instead of extending it, if that makes any sense. I don't really know if that counts as a spoiler, because since this book is a historical fiction, historically, that must be what happened in real life. Anyway, I don't really know if any of that made any sense, but basically I preferred book 1, and I will be researching who these people are later on, but like, I think that Katharine did write the American Royal series much better than this duology. I will probably read more by her in the future, but this duology is definitely her weakest. So anyway, I rated this book 3 stars. I felt like I said nothing and everything all at once. So with that said, take that as you will. Anyway, back to the really good books on this list. This book is called The Teal Collector. This story is a middle-grade fantasy, but the plot has like science fiction elements, but I think this book is categorized as a fantasy because it's not set in our world and there are no references to our world, so technically it's set in a fantastical environment. But since basically it follows a young main character who lives on an isolated island, and essentially she's believed that the rest of the world has been wiped out by like climate change, and essentially many people on this island are becoming sick and turning into monsters, and her brother is the latest victim, so she naturally wants to cure this illness because it's affecting the people around her. So, yeah. Does that make any sense? Anyway, I thought this book was so good and so fantastic. I loved the world building and the brother-sister relationship and the characters and the plot, and I also loved the introduction of an outsider. I love it when, like, the main character starts to question everything that she's ever known, when an outsider comes in and starts questioning, like, what's going on, if that makes any sense, because I think it's so realistic, because why would she question everything unless she has a reason to? Anyway, I love the characters and the plot and everything about this book. I thought it was so fantastic and so good. I had really high expectations prior to reading this book because I have rated multiple books by this author already 4 stars. So with that said, I'm so glad this book not only met those expectations and exceeded them, because I also rated this book 4 stars, and I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. I think this book is so underrated and it deserves so much more hype. So anyway, with that said, again, I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called Ordinary Love. This story is an adult contemporary romance following a young queer adult woman who is navigating her current abusive relationship as an old flame from her past shows up. And when I finished this book, I immediately tweeted that this book is for fans of Evelyn Hugo. And I would definitely stand by that and even go as far to say that this book is better than Evelyn Hugo, and I think it's so good. First of all, the depiction of emotional abuse was done so well, and it was done so lyrically, if that makes any sense. I love the writing and the pacing and the plot and the characters, and the sapphic romance was so cute and so well done. I think this book is so emotional and it's so good. I loved every single element of it, except for the ending. I think the author forgot to publish the last few chapters or something, because the ending and the way that it wrapped up was a little bit too sudden for me. Like, what happened afterwards regarding particularly her children. You know what I mean? Anyway, this book was so good and so well done, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I think that particularly my sapphic audience would also really, really enjoy it. It's done so well. It's so good. This book is so underrated, and I think it's like so pretty. Anyway, with that said, I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. The last book on this list, and definitely not the least, is called The Trouble with Heroes. This story is a middle grade contemporary following a young boy who's seeking reparations after accidentally vandalizing a local hero's gravestone. I really enjoyed this book, frankly, because first of all, I loved how it was written in verse, because it felt so poetic and so well done. And I loved the analogies. Second of all, I loved the portrayal and depiction of grief. I think this book was done so well. I love it when stories center on grief, because something about those stories makes everything like so lyrical and so poetic and just so good. Maybe it's because the characters are going through something so sad, and the best stories always come from a sad place. I don't know if that's accurate or not. But anyway, I think this book was so good and so well done. I loved the pacing and the writing and the characters, and his relationship with his mom was done so well. And like everything about this book was so good and so well done. Anyway, with that said, I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. So in conclusion, I am pre-filming this video November 18th, so I hope my November reading month has really improved by the time that you're watching this video, because I think this video won't be public until December 4th or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, in conclusion, if you enjoy this video, please don't hesitate to give it a big thumbs up, Comment down below the moon emoji if you made it all the way to the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!